Tega Ed Talks, you all know, we are picking up topics from different walks of life. And this is not a training program. Tega Ed Talks is basically to create awareness on various topics with one or two takeaways. Like in poetry, we took away the haiku thing with us, and then blockchain, and so there would be more coming in.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Bhanu sir, for setting the context. So, as he said, that we all go through stressful situations in our life, be it work or home, and when you are not mentally there, it really affects the way you think, you act, you feel. And at that moment, you take decisions which might probably not be the right decision. So, how do we deal with such situations? So, today we have an expert with us, our guest speaker today.
Next 70, 75 minutes, we're going to be talking a lot about the whole mental health as a topic, right? As most of you know, as Sanjeev said, my career started in human resources, and I did that for over 23 years, and then I decided to let go that, and then co-found Silver Oak Health as an organization which is focusing on mental health. It's been close to 7 years in this journey. I've personally learned a lot about mental health, and I tell a lot of my folks in my conversation that had I known a lot of these things which I'm going to be talking about today, a lot earlier in my career, my human beingness would have been a lot better. My professional side would have been a lot better, right? Everything would have been a lot better, right? But it's never late. It's never late, right? I think it's wonderful. So I'm going to share a lot of those experiences with all of you, and I look forward to have a very engaging and interactive session with all of you, right? All right, so we'll get started, and before we get started, let's do a quick breathing exercise. Can we all do that? Okay. I want all of you to sit comfortably. Just breathe in through your nose. You can exhale through your nose, or you can exhale through your mouth by doing this. All right. Just we'll do 4 or 5 breaths. All right. Let's get started. All right, thank you. By the way, this is my IDEX for getting this started, right? Obviously, I'm also very nervous, being here. Just kidding. So this is basically to calm your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because when we get stressed, right, the last thing we do is remember to breathe, right? I'm sure you've heard several times about breathing, right? Just inhale, just breathe deeply for a few breaths and you'll feel normal. That's because of the whole calming down your parasympathetic nervous system. So we'll talk about a lot of these things from a physiological standpoint, why we do what we do, how it affects our health, all of that we'll talk about in the presentation, right? So let's start with a small exercise. Always physical exercise is good, right? It keeps us, active, right? So I want all of you to put your hands up if the statement what is going to appear on the screen applies to you. So you felt happy in the past week. I'm assuming all the hands will go up, right? All of us would have felt happy at some moment. Okay, great. Okay, and by the way, it doesn't mean that entire week. At any moment, even for 1 second, you felt happy in the last 1 week. Just raise your hand, right? And similarly, did you feel sad during the last 1 week? Of course, all of us do. Okay, all right. What about angry? Of course, angry is the most common, right? We all feel angry all the time. So that is also something we all experienced. Were you all stressed out in the last 1 week at any point? Okay, all right. Glad to see some hands are not going up. In the last 1 week, do you all have thoughts? Of course, all the hands have to go up because as long as we are alive, our mind will produce thoughts and we will experience that. Okay, so most of the hands went up for most of these statements, right? This is pretty much what mental health is all about, right? If you are thinking mental health something different, or I'm going to talk about mental health something different, I'm sorry if I'm disappointing you, but this is pretty much what mental health is, right? And just to sum it up, the way you think affects the way you feel affects the way you behave. I'll just repeat it. The way you think affects the way you feel affects the way you behave, right? So if somebody wants to change the behavior, and all of us do, right? All of us want to change our behavior in the long run, we have to start changing our thoughts. mental health is not complex, right? Mental health is as similar to our physical health. Unfortunately, we don't give the same importance, but we'll talk about why it is important. I'll also want to talk about little bit in terms of what is happening today with mental health, right? While the importance of mental health is something we'll talk about, but today, where are we on mental health, right? The first thing I want to ask is, do you all believe that we treat mental health and physical health in the same breath? No, absolutely not. Okay. Okay, that's also an important question for us to answer. Why are we not doing that? If somebody says, I'm having this issue, I'm constantly thinking about it, it's worrying me, it's bothering me, I'm not able to focus on work, I'll say, hey, what nonsense, it's all in your head, man, get over it. That is a normal statement we all have heard, right? Nobody tells you, when I have a broken arm, nobody says, hey, forget it, yeah, it'll all get right, you just go and work. Nobody says. They immediately say, did you meet an ortho? Did you get an X-ray? Did you get an MRI? You want to make sure that there's no bone, broken bone, all of that, right? When it comes to a broken arm, there is so much noise around it, but then, yeah. So all of this, again, triggers down to something called lack of awareness and acceptance. Right? So all of these are interconnected, by the way, right? Because of stigma and taboo, the awareness is less. Because of less awareness, I can't accept the fact that what is going on. And to go back to why I can't accept this, because of all the reasons we talked about, right? I'm worried about people will label me. Ye pagal hai, right? Yeah, something is off with him. So lack of acceptance and awareness is also key in the mental health spectrum today, why we don't treat physical health and mental in the same breath, right? And finally, there is one more reason why we don't access mental health solutions, services, support. But there is one more, most important, I think, I'm sure among all the problem statement, that probably is the most important problem statement for all of us, right? Which is basically the affordability. So let's talk about, why talk about mental health is important, right? Because this is not a battle you want to fight alone, right? It's, as it is very hard to go through this challenge, right? When somebody is going through this challenge, right? And generally we don't want to talk about it. That is the, scenario here, right? And it becomes even more harder to fight this battle by yourself. So that's one of the most important reason why we should be talking about mental health, right? So the point is, when we start talking about it, right, we are doing a couple of things. We are normalizing it. There is no more stigma, no more taboo around this topic. Right? That's the only way to break the stigma, break the chain. Right? We all need to talk about it, make it sound as if I have a broken arm, I have a toothache. Right? We don't even blink to say those things, right? So can I say, I don't know, I'm feeling little, overwhelmed today. Something is going on in my head. I don't know. I can't just put my fingers to it. Something is bothering me. Can we start having those kind of conversations, right? It's only when we start talking about it, a lot more people will normalize it and then start discussing and talking about it themselves as well, right? So that is one of the most important reasons why we should talk about mental health, right? Of course, right? I don't know how many of you know, that's one of the huge issue which is related directly to mental health, right? In terms of people committing or attempting, right? So I think the last number as of 2022, globally, we lost over 800,000 people to suicide. And India alone accounts for almost close to 1,65,000, right? For every one attempt of, one person letting their life go, there are 20 people trying to attempt suicide, right? So it's such a, uh, a nasty number. I don't even want to talk about it, but then unfortunately, facts are facts, and we should know the facts, right? It is also important, right, in the mental health spectrum, so that we can create a lot more case studies, we can create a lot more, like, again, similar to physical, I'm going to do a lot of comparison on physical health, right? There are a lot more case studies, a lot more comparisons, a lot more data. And of course, the WHO has predicted that annually the current productivity loss is $1 trillion. The global loss due to mental health globally is $1 trillion. I don't even know how many zeros are there in 1 trillion. Okay, so that's a number globally if you want to compare that, right? So this is a, again, this is a study I'm quoting here, right? The study was called as the stress toll, the toll each organization is paying today because of mental health, right? So again, I'm trying to, make sure we kind of understand the importance of mental health at workplace, right? With that, let's talk about how does it affect us today, right? Let's look at a lot more details about what are some of the most common symptoms we all experience when we go through stress, right? So we have bucketed that into 4 buckets: physical, psychological, behavioral, and cognitive, right? So we'll kind of go into each of these buckets and see what happens when we go through stress, right? On the physical side, while it's most common, but it's also the least of what we are aware when it affects us, right? So I'll give you my own personal example here. Before I came into this line, and I'm, again, not that I know so much about mental health doesn't mean that I don't go through stress. Obviously, I also go through stress, right? So for me, the most common physical symptom is my muscles around my neck and shoulder, right? This area will get really tight. And for the longest time, and I used to think the way I slept the previous night, maybe the pillow was too low or too high, or I slept in a certain posture, which is causing this muscle ache for me, right? And I used to do the same thing like Iodex lagao or Move lagao, whatever, or pop in some muscle relaxer pills if it's too severe, without knowing that I am going through some stress which is affecting me, right? So I got to know now, the moment I know this tightness happens either in the shoulder, neck area, which is what happens to me. It could happen in any part of your body, anywhere. It could, for example, some people will have lower back stiffness, right? Or some people could have some other muscle related issue throughout any part of their body, right? So that was something I learned, as to why it happens. So a lot of us don't even realize that these kind of issues are related to stress, right? The other one is, of course, the migraines, headaches, your heartbeat increasing. It's all very common, but then a lot of people don't relate migraine headache also to stress. Let's talk about behavioral, right? So this is probably the most common, right? Because you talked about anger, right? Which is very common for us to experiences and people to witness also, right? It is something everybody notices, right? In a lot of my sessions when I'm doing for managers, I ask them, how do you know your team members are stressed? Immediately this answer will come: behavioral challenges, behavioral challenge. Everybody will talk about it because it's very evident. Okay, so let's look at next as the psychological aspect, right? You talked about stress, correct? In terms of, how it affects us, right? Stress is probably the most common from a psychological standpoint, how it affects us, right? And when we talk about stress, the most important 2 aspects of stress we need to talk about is anxiety and depression. So anxiety is always about the future, something unknown, something yet to happen. We constantly worry about it, right? That is what anxiety is. Anxiety is about the future, the unknown, something yet to happen. We constantly worry about it. We used to call it as what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? We kind of play all the scenarios in our head. So let's talk about depression on the other side, right? Anxiety, we talked about the future, unknown, yet to happen, constant worry. Depression, on the other hand, is always about the past, something which is already transpired. I just don't like the outcome. And I'm constantly brooding about it. I'm very sad about it, right? So anxiety is about the future, unknown, yet to happen. Depression on the other side is something already transpired about the past. I just don't like the outcome the way it happened to me, right? We call him only if. Only if this did not happen to me. Only if this person did not do this to me. Only if I had got that promotion. Right? Those are the terms we use when we talk about depression. Anxiety and depression are 2 sides of the same coin, and coin being stress. Right? So this is the most common way we experience stress, through anxiety or depression, right? And it's something we all go through on a daily basis, right? There are anxious moments, there are sad moments, but then there are other moments also we all go through, right? Only the problem is when it continues or lingers for a longer period, then you need professional help, right? So, all right, on the cognitive side, You talked about one of the aspects on the cognitive side, right? Innovation, right? All of that happens here. Your focus, concentration, creativity, higher order thinking, decision making, right? Memory, all of that gets disrupted when you are in a stressful situation. Again, let's talk about some of the myths around mental health as well. So it is something, I think all of us should be aware of, because we are today, are living in midst of all these myths when it comes to mental health, right? So when you look at mental health aren't real illness, right? That is another big myth. The fact is, similar to physical health, right? Mental health is almost very similar, right? It could affect anybody, everybody. So people with mental illness are violent and dangerous, right? Have you all not seen this in movie? And most of our knowledge about mental health comes from movie, unfortunately. In fact, I would say the other way around, right? People with mental illnesses are probably falling prey to violence than the other way around, right? They're not violent. It's just that they are going through some challenges and seeking help, right? Then we start believing that, they could be very violent as well, right? And then the other aspect is people don't recover from mental illnesses, right? Again, there could be some aspects of mental illness where we need to be supported throughout our life. People who have experienced mental illness can't work. Again, going back to the same logic, my physical health doesn't limit me to do whatever I need to do with the right kind of support. Similarly, people going through mental challenges can also perform the same way or better way by getting all the right support, right? So it's very important to break these myths, right? And finally, children can't have a mental illness like depression, only adults can, right? This is also a myth, because mental health affects everybody, irrespective of any age, right? So finally, I want to end this topic, right? This section of the topic saying that similar to physical health, people going through mental challenge can lead a very normal life. What can I do, right? How can I create that environment which showcases that, we are all supporting them, right? The most important is, creating a sense of safety for somebody, right? Because the most important aspect people go through is they don't feel safe in this environment because they are afraid of being labeled, being judged and whatnot, right? So I don't have that comfort feeling of feeling safe, right? So even in a counseling session, the most important aspect what a counselor will talk about is confidentiality, creating that safe environment, that individual. All of that is what we discuss about. So that is very, very important in having this conversation with somebody who's going through some challenge. The next is, a lot of us, don't even attempt to understand what a person is going through, right? Because our listening capabilities have gone out of the window, unfortunately, right? So in this conversation, it's very important to put that effort in terms of trying to understand the individual, what challenge they're going through, right? And of course, trust is what I talked about, right? When we create trust, the safety and all those aspects fall in place, right? And compassion is another important aspect in this whole conversation. I will talk about compassion a little later. I'll tell you what compassion is, what self-compassion is. But that is also something very, very important in these conversations. And finally, offering, unconditional support for somebody, right? I'm not doing it because I just have to do it. He's my colleague. No, I want to really help my colleague, somebody important to me. Or as a manager, I want to really support somebody, who's going through this challenge, right? So those are the important support conversations we can create, right? De-stressing techniques, right? We all have our own techniques to de-stress, right? Everybody does various things. So the techniques might vary, but then all of them work for everybody in a very different way, right? We talked about exercise. We talked about eating healthy is very, very important, right? We don't realize how important eating healthy is. Yes, sir. Sleep, right? We talked about insomnia earlier in the session, right? Sleep is very important. And I think one aspect of a physical body where we don't give full credit is sleep. In fact, we abuse sleep, right? And then unfortunately, there's no shelf life for sleep. It's not like I didn't sleep for 2 nights, third night I can catch up, right? Whatever gone is gone, right? And that's generally weaved in our, behavior as well, right? Did you know when was the last pandemic we all went through before COVID? 100 years back, 1919 to 1921, Spanish flu. It took more than 50 million lives, right? Human beings are resilient, right? We bounced back. We kept a very positive attitude towards life, and then we have come a long way, right? That is what we all do. right? So it's very important to understand that aspect as well. Taking a break, unwinding is also very important, and that's why, we all have our own little vacation time, time off from, taking from work and whatnot, right? Self-compassion. I was talking about compassion earlier, right? It's very important to practice this. And by the way, self-compassion is a scientifically proven methodology. Okay, so let's quickly talk about what is compassion. Anybody wants to try? It's very simple. Compassion is nothing but showing love, concern for others, especially the people who we care about, loved ones. And what does all of these techniques we talked about does, right? It gives you this daily dose of feel-good happiness chemicals. And what is this daily dose of feel-good happy chemicals? Is nothing but dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, right? Third one is self-care, okay? This is probably the lowest on priority. In fact, the previous generation was worse on this. They probably were scoring on negative, right? If I look at my parents, for them the entire life went thinking about their kids and everybody else around them, and they did nothing for themselves, right? At least the current generation, we are a little better, right? So self-care is not selfish, right? Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is very important as part of taking care of your mental health, right? Taking time for yourself, right? To do what you love to do. So let's quickly talk about mindfulness as a tool which can help us live in the present moment, right? So mindfulness is not new to us. Mindfulness has been in existence for over 2,500 years, originated from India, right? In the last 40, 50 years, there's been a lot of scientific research, study, peer review study, papers done, and today it is a scientifically proven, it is an evidence-based methodology which can help de-stress. Plus, mindfulness is the one aspect which could light up your prefrontal cortex, which means your focus, creativity, attention to details, memory, all of that can improve by practicing mindfulness. Okay? So what is mindfulness all about? Mindfulness is all about learning to live in the present moment. And mindfulness starts with very basics of awareness. Right? Awareness is key to mindfulness. To me, the way I look at how mindfulness applies at workplaces, awareness brings a lot of clarity. Right? If I have clarity, it breeds confidence in me. And if I'm confident, I take the right actions. And if I take the right action, I get the right results. As simple as that.